Be me, Dylan, 34, back-end engineer at a logistics SaaS company. We sell reliability to carriers who only remember our name when freight stops moving. Most days are quiet math, boring dashboards, and incident rotations that steal your weekends politely. Leadership sells stability like it appears automatically, while engineers keep it alive with duct tape. Our office tries to look like a startup, even though we run like a cautious insurance company. Glass walls everywhere, brand slogans on every hallway, and belonging posters that feel aggressively mandatory. The cafeteria downstairs is the only predictable system we have that never ships a breaking change. Food is mid, but it is consistent, and consistency is comfort when you live inside on-call alarms. At noon, you grab a tray, sit with your team, and pretend you are not thinking about the next page. We all relied on that 1 hour because the rest of the day is meetings and hidden fires. Then the company hired a new director of people experience and ethical culture, and lunch stopped being lunch. Her name was Kendra Shaw, 36, former consultant, professional smiler, and believer in behavior design. The introduction email had a glossy headshot, a long title, and a mission statement with 0 measurable outcomes. It promised values alignment, harm reduction, and whole-person workplace transformation starting immediately. Engineering mostly ignored it because HR initiatives usually die after 2 all-hands in a survey. We assumed she would run workshops, collect feedback, and disappear into slideshow heaven. We were wrong because Kendra did not touch code. She touched incentives and daily rituals. She picked the cafeteria because it's the one place everyone visits. No calendar invite required. Week 1 looked harmless, like a branding refresh with softer fonts and trendy green icons. New posters appeared near the coffee machine reading, "Compassion is strength," and "Eat with intention." The words were printed on thick paper, the kind that says someone had a real budget. Then Monday lunch arrived, and the menu changed like someone pushed an update without a rollback plan. The burger price tripled overnight, and the chicken bowl suddenly cost more than a decent dinner. The steak special looked like a typo, but the register confirmed it was not a typo. Meanwhile, the vegan bowls got bright stickers and a discount labeled "Sustainability Reward." Under every meat item was tiny gray text reading "Impact Adjustment," like guilt rendered into tax. The receipt printed a cheerful score called Planet Points, like lunch became a morality game. At first, we blamed the vendor because vendors love raising prices and blaming supply chains. But the pattern felt too deliberate, too clean, like someone engineered it for behavior change. At 9:07 a.m., an email dropped from Kendra with the subject, "Ethical Food Initiative Pilot." She said no one was banning anything, while explaining pricing now reflected true externalized costs. She promised supportive incentives for plant choices, plus education resources for curious colleagues. She ended with "We move together," which is corporate for comply quietly or get labeled difficult. Engineers responded the only way engineers do, by testing the system with the simplest scenario. I ordered my normal burger, watched the total hit my screen, and laughed once from pure disbelief. The laugh died quickly because I realized my lunch break now had a paywall of ideology. The cashier sounded trained, dead friendly, like she had already survived angry people earlier that morning. That's when I understood the policy had been rehearsed, because scripts only exist after conflict. Day 3 introduced the real control mechanism, and it arrived with the same cheerful tone. Another email announced service window adjustments to reduce distressing visual triggers in the cafeteria. Translation was simple. Meat would not be served during the first hour of lunch. From 11:30 to 12:30, the meat counter would be covered and only plant meals were featured. Animal proteins would start at 12:30, as if meat needed a content warning. There was no apology, only justification, plus the line, "Thank you for doing the work." That phrase made my jaw tighten because it treated hunger like a moral homework assignment. The next day, the cafeteria staff rolled a white panel over the meat display at 11:30. A small sign hung from the panel reading, "Protein service begins at 12:30. The plant-based line stayed open, bright and celebrated, with green stickers and upbeat signage. Grown adults stood there silently recalculating calendars like they were scheduling maintenance windows. Some waited, staring at the covered counter like it hid classified documents. Others grabbed vegan bowls they did not want, because meetings do not care about your principles. A few walked out and ordered delivery, suddenly paying twice, once in money and once in time. Within a week, lunch drift became a real operational problem, hiding behind polite smiles. People started eating earlier, later, or in cars, because nobody wanted to be seen in the corner. Release windows stayed fixed, incidents stayed random, and our bodies stopped matching the shared schedule. In tech, coordination is oxygen, and lunch drift quietly suffocates response times. When a pager goes off, you need the right people reachable immediately, not back in 20. Week 2 added a social layer because Kendra was not satisfied with pricing and timing. A long table appeared in the middle labeled Community Table, decorated with fresh flowers daily. Little cards asked, "Share your why," like the cafeteria became group therapy for virtue. In the far corner, a smaller table appeared with a sign reading, "Mindful Consumption Area." That corner got pamphlets titled "Plant Protein on a Budget," plus a QR code to a slide deck. The community table got sunlight and flowers. The mindful corner got pamphlets and quiet shame. No one said segregation, but the room layout said it for them. People eating vegan sat in the center under the posters. People waiting for meat hovered awkwardly. Some guys started taking their trays upstairs to avoid the gaze, like they were sneaking contraband. Kendra began showing up at lunch, walking slowly between tables like a lifeguard of resentment. She smiled warmly, asked questions about choices, and listened like she was collecting data points. One day, she stopped near my table and asked if I felt supported by the new environment. I said I felt hungry and busy, and she nodded like hunger was a teachable moment. She said discomfort was a sign of growth, and I felt my patience turn into ice. The moment got personal on a Tuesday when I was primary on-call for our routing engine. My phone had been buzzing since morning, and my calendar was packed with client-adjacent meetings. At 11:40, I approached the counter and asked for a chicken bowl early because time mattered. The cashier hesitated and glanced toward the salad bar, and I followed her eyes. Kendra stood there in an expensive blazer, badge-centered, hair perfect, calm like policy embodied. She stepped closer with a friendly voice and asked if I needed help navigating the pilot. I explained I was on call, meaning my lunch break was a fragile window. She nodded sympathetically, then said, "No one is entitled to immediate gratification." The word entitled landed like a slap-wearing therapy language. She added that the first hour was for colleagues who should not see violence on display. She said if I wanted meat, I could wait, because empathy required practice. I realized any argument would turn me into a screenshot, labeled resistance. So I bought a bland vegan bowl and left, chewing anger like cardboard. Back at my desk, I started documenting everything the way I document systems. I saved the emails, photographed the menu, and kept receipts like they were error logs. I didn't want revenge, I wanted evidence, because systems fail when you ignore signals. Then Kendra escalated again, because believers always need a bigger stage. Thursday morning, she emailed Educational Experience Day, promising an awareness installation in the lobby. She said participation was optional, curiosity encouraged, and photos welcome for internal storytelling. I expected posters, maybe a video, something easy to ignore while walking to my desk. Instead, the lobby contained a fenced pen with real hay and a real calf inside. The calf stood there wide-eyed, legs shaky, ear tag visible like a barcode of innocence. A bright sign on the fence read, "Meet the life behind your burger." Underneath, in smaller font, it said, "Choose compassion, choose change." Kendra stood beside the pen with a clipboard, greeting employees like a museum curator. Interns hovered nearby, unsure if sadness was required, like emotional compliance was part of onboarding. People walked past slowly, laughing nervously, taking pictures or staring at the elevator doors. The calf made a low sound that hit my chest harder than I expected. I told myself it was manipulative theater, then felt guilty for even thinking that. Then nature solved the moment, because the calf lifted its tail and dropped a wet pile. The sound echoed off lobby tile, and the smell arrived like an unpleasant truth. Someone giggled, someone cursed quietly, and facilities rushed in with cleaning supplies. Kendra's smile never cracked because she said, "Important conversations aren't always comfortable." She did not help facilities. She just used their labor to keep her exhibit running. I logged the date, took a discrete photo, and added it to my growing folder. The next day, we had a client visit, one of those partner alignment tours leadership loves. This client was our biggest carrier, the one whose penalties could ruin our quarter. Their team arrived in expensive suits with calm eyes and polite voices that hide leverage. The calf pen was still there when they walked in, and their faces tightened subtly. Kendra launched into a values speech about sustainability, courage, and ethical leadership. The client lead nodded politely and said, "Interesting," which in corporate means, "We noticed." They moved on, but the lobby smelled faintly farm-like despite aggressive citrus cleaning. That afternoon, our leadership suddenly cared a lot about operational focus and reducing distractions. We all felt the tension because clients don't like unpredictability, especially when it's self-inflicted. Monday proved how expensive lunch ideology can get because the outage hit at the worst time. At 11:52, our routing API started returning errors like it was choking on its own cues. Dashboards lit up red, latency spiked, and alerts poured into my phone like rain. I opened the incident channel and called for help, expecting the usual fast responses. Responses came slowly, one by one, each with an away message that made me curse. One engineer was grabbing food off-site, which meant he was across the street. Another was waiting for the protein window, which meant he was stuck in cafeteria limbo. My manager didn't answer because his calendar block said lunch 12:30, like policy controlled him too. I triaged alone, rolling back a recent change, draining queues, and watching graphs wobble. We stabilized briefly, then slipped again, like the system was breathing through a straw. Client weekly alignment call was scheduled for 12:05 because of course it was. We patched enough to survive the call, but survive is the right verb. The client joined calm and sharp, asking about SLA reliability and what happened at 11:52. Our side joined late and messy waves, some with wind noise, some with faint chewing. It sounded like half the team was calling from cars because they were. We gave careful answers, careful promises, and avoided naming the cafeteria as the real disruption. Then Kendra appeared in the incident channel, like a ghost holding a clipboard. She posted a friendly reminder asking us to avoid violent terminology during stressful events. She suggested replacing kill switch with deactivation and war room with support room. The service was still unstable while she policed vocabulary, and something inside me went cold. I didn't reply because replying feeds the machine, so I took a screenshot instead. The client noticed our instability anyway because they always notice, even when they stay polite. They asked who owned incident process and whether internal distractions were affecting operations. The phrase internal distractions hung like a knife wrapped in professional courtesy. After the call, leadership huddled, because when clients get calm, executives get scared. 2 days later, an email announced an executive visit, meaning the CEO would be on site. Our CEO didn't show up unless money was leaking or reputation was bleeding. That night, Kendra posted a new document titled Ethical Dining Standards and Lunch Equity. It described the meat-free hour as a priority window designed to protect impacted groups. It said repeated complaints could be treated as resistance to inclusion and documented accordingly. The word documented snapped my annoyance into focus because documented means discoverable. Discoverable means legal, and legal means the company might panic if evidence reached the wrong desk. I assembled my folder into something boring and credible because boring evidence travels farther. I included menu photos, pricing changes, timing emails, the CAF exhibit announcement, and my screenshot. I added a simple timeline with dates, because executives respect dates more than feelings. I avoided dramatic claims because dramatic claims get dismissed as personality conflicts. I framed it as operational disruption and reputational risk disguised as moral education. I told myself I might never need it because I still wanted peace. CEO visit day arrived with a smell of lemon spray and desperate optimism. Leadership suddenly had time for hallway greetings and culture conversations they never had before. Kendra floated through the office like she owned it, loud enough that everyone noticed. Around noon, the CEO arrived, older, heavy-set, calm, and terrifyingly polite. He shook hands, listened to quick summaries, and then did something nobody expected. He walked to the cafeteria alone without an entourage, like he wanted reality unscripted. I followed at a distance because incident instincts can smell systems failing in real time. He studied the menu board, his eyes moving slowly across the absurd prices. Then he pointed at a burger special and asked for it like it was normal. The cashier delivered the practiced smile and said, "We don't serve meat before 12:30. The CEO paused, like the company had just spoken nonsense out loud. He asked what that meant, and the cashier recited the policy like a prayer. She mentioned safe lunch environment language, and the CEO's eyebrows rose slightly. He asked who approved this, and the cashier said, "People experience," then glanced around nervously. Kendra appeared instantly, smiling bright, as if she had been waiting for this moment. She greeted him warmly, using his first name, like she already pictured this as validation. The CEO asked why he couldn't buy a burger at noon in his own company. Kendra explained the priority window in a teacher tone, framing it as protection and empathy practice. She described meat displays as distressing, called waiting growth, and smiled like moral certainty. The CEO asked why prices tripled, and she said true cost, like math was optional. He asked for actual numbers, and she said cost is not only financial. He asked whether finance approved the model, and she pivoted to values and leadership. Executives hear pivots as admissions, and his jaw tightened just a little. He looked around, noticing flowers on the community table and pamphlets in the corner. He asked why there was a corner area labeled mindful consumption. Kendra said it encouraged harmony, and the CEO asked if harmony meant segregation. Kendra's smile tightened like she swallowed something sharp. He asked about the CAF in the lobby, and she called it an empathy installation. He asked if it included the part where the CAF defecated on the floor during business hours. The cafeteria went dead quiet, because everyone suddenly realized the CEO saw everything. Kendra said transformative experiences aren't tidy, and the CEO repeated interesting like it tasted bad. Then he asked the simplest question that shattered her narrative. He asked whether the kitchen could serve meat right now if the system allowed it. The cashier hesitated, then admitted the food was prepared, but the register blocked it. The CEO turned slowly toward Kendra, calm as a cold server response. Kendra said the system supports policy, like she was proud of controlling it. The CEO told the cashier to remove the block immediately. Kendra tried to protest about safety and priority, but the CEO repeated the command, still calm. The cashier's hands shook as she tapped the screen and changed a setting. The register updated, and suddenly the burger could be sold, proving nothing was logistical. It was pure control, implemented in software, enforced through shame. The CEO looked at Kendra and said quietly, "This was never about food availability." He said it was about authority, and his voice stayed gentle, which made it worse. He asked who granted her autonomy to implement operational restrictions without executive approval. Kendra said the company trusted her expertise, and the CEO asked about operational impact measurements. She said culture is operations, and he said operations is uptime and penalties. The word penalties changed the air because penalties are where ideology becomes invoices. His eyes scanned the room and landed on me, standing awkwardly near the drink station. He asked how long the pilot had been running, and I stepped forward before fear could stop me. I kept my voice neutral and said 17 business days because I had the dates. I said I had emails, receipts, screenshots, and a timeline if he wanted details. I held out my folder like it was a stack of incident logs. The CEO extended his hand without breaking eye contact with Kendra. I gave him the folder, and Kendra's eyes flicked to it like it was a weapon. He flipped through fast, the way executives read contracts like sport. He saw the pricing change, the meat-free window email, the ethical standards doc, and my screenshot. Kendra started talking quickly about privilege and resistance and harm, trying to reclaim the room. The CEO raised one hand gently and said he didn't care about narratives right now. He said he cared about client trust, operational stability, and legal exposure. Kendra said legal exposure silences change, and the CEO said legal exposure prevents lawsuits. He said women do not need cafeteria sabotage to be respected. He said inclusion doesn't require humiliating employees for dietary choices. He said we are not running a re-education lunch program inside a critical operations business. Kendra's smile finally cracked, just slightly like her mask hit reality. The CEO asked for the name of the third-party cafeteria vendor and the contract manager. He asked who authorized POS restrictions and whether facilities approved live animal installations. He asked whether the incident channel vocabulary policing came from an official policy. Every question sounded calm, but each one was a scalpel cutting authority away. He instructed Kendra to stop all pilots immediately pending review. He told her she would have no access to operational systems, communications channels, or vendor controls. He said an investigation would determine misuse of authority and hostile environment creation. Kendra tried to frame it as punishment for protecting people, and the CEO said it was consequence. He said protecting people means ensuring stable work and equal treatment, not manufactured discomfort. He asked the cashier to print a normal receipt and restore standard pricing schedules. He walked out with the burger untouched in his hand, like evidence rather than lunch. That afternoon, Kendra's messages stopped appearing on Slack, like someone muted a noisy bot. The next morning, the white panel was gone, and meat served at normal times again. The green virtue stickers vanished, and the menu board quietly returned to baseline pricing. The posters disappeared from walls so fast it felt like a coordinated cleanup operation. The community table lost its flowers, becoming just a normal table again. People ate normally, and the cafeteria sounded like a cafeteria, not a therapy session. A company-wide email arrived from the CEO's office announcing the pilot had concluded. It said employees should not feel targeted or pressured based on dietary preference or personal belief. It did not mention Kendra by name, because executives avoid names when lawyers are listening. Later that week, I saw Kendra in the lobby carrying a cardboard box. She still wore a perfect blazer, but her eyes stayed fixed on the exit. Nobody clapped, nobody booed, because adults don't celebrate, they just remember. The real satisfaction wasn't revenge. It was returning to a world where lunch wasn't political. 2 weeks later, our biggest client renewed without drama, and leadership pretended nothing happened. The incident response process got a quiet refocus memo, basically admitting the drift was real. I archived my folder because engineers never delete logs, we just compress them. Then the unusual ending arrived a month later, delivered by LinkedIn like a cursed notification. Kendra posted an upbeat update announcing she joined a boutique firm as principal ethical workplace consultant. Her post said she helps organizations align daily rituals with compassionate operational excellence. She shared a sanitized photo of a modern cafeteria with green signage and smiling employees. She called it a case study about successful transition to values-based dining. Comments were full of claps and hearts from people who never had to be on call. I laughed once because the internet rewards the story, not the consequences. Then my laugh stopped, because the next week our biggest client scheduled a joint workshop. The calendar invite said Vendor Partner Culture Alignment Session, hosted by an external consultant. I opened the invite details and there was Kendra's name at the top. Our client had hired her and now she was coming back, not as an employee but as paid authority. Leadership couldn't refuse without looking anti-values, so they accepted with tight smiles. On workshop day, Kendra walked into our building again, confident, polished, and untouched by shame. She greeted executives warmly like they were old friends and ignored the engineers completely. She set up slides in the main conference room and titled them Compassionate Language in Critical Operations. The first slide replaced incident with support event and root cause with learning opportunity. I sat there stunned, realizing the system always reroutes, even when you patch it. The last slide asked everyone to pledge one daily ethical practice, and the client lead smiled proudly. Afterward, the client lead pulled our CEO aside and said calmly, "We expect alignment on this." Our CEO nodded like a hostage negotiator because penalties are always hiding behind polite words. That night, I opened my archived folder, looked at the dates, and understood the real twist. We didn't defeat the ideology, we just moved it upstream into the client's contract language. In the morning, our CEO emailed engineering asking us to support new communication standards carefully. I stared at the message, realized lunch was only the first battleground, and felt the pager vibrate again.